You will never step foot in that palace, you worthless orphan. Folashad's aunt slapped her across the face, the sound echoing through the compound. Tomorrow, every girl in the kingdom would stand before the Hoba to see if they were his long-lost daughter. Every girl, except Folashade. She touched the strange mark on her shoulder, the one her aunt always told her to hide. What Folashade didn't know, her aunt had been hiding far more than just a birthmark. And tomorrow, 11 years of lies would come crashing down. But before we dive into Folashade's story, if you love African folktales filled with secrets, betrayal, and justice, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Trust me, you'll want to see how this one ends. Now, let's begin. Folashade woke to the rooster's crow, just like she had every morning for the past 11 years. Her body ached. The thin mat beneath her did nothing to cushion the hard kitchen floor. Around, her pots and pans hung from the ceiling like silent witnesses to her suffering. She was 16 years old, and she couldn't remember the last time someone had called her by her name with kindness. Folashade! Her aunt's voice cut through the morning air like a machete. She scrambled to her feet, a wrapper nearly falling off a thin frame. Yes, ma. The water! Have you fetched it yet? My daughters need to bathe. Folashade grabbed the clay pot stacked in the corner and hurried outside. The sun hadn't even risen fully, but the compound was already buzzing with unusual energy. Today was different. Today, the entire kingdom was talking about one thing: the missing princess. As Folashad balanced the heavy pots on her head and walked toward the village stream, she heard the whispers everywhere. They say the Oba will give half his kingdom to whoever finds her. 11 years she's been gone. Poor man has never stopped searching. Every girl must go to the palace tomorrow. Every girl. Folashade's heart squeezed. She had heard the royal announcement yesterday in the marketplace, though she'd been too busy carrying her aunt's shopping to pay full attention. The king's daughter, Princess Adez, had been kidnapped by bandits when she was only 5 years old, stolen in the night during a brutal raid on the palace. The Oba's guards had chased the bandits for days, but the princess vanished like smoke. Now, 16 years old, she could be anyone, anywhere. The only way to identify her? A birthmark. A crescent moon shape on her left shoulder blade. Folashade touched her own shoulder instinctively, then stopped herself. Don't be foolish, she thought. You're nobody, just an orphan. But that birthmark, she shook her head and kept walking. By the time Folashade returned with the water, the compound had transformed into chaos. Her aunt, Madame Ibidun, stood in the courtyard barking orders at everyone. Her 3 daughters, Morayo, Bunmi, and Kemi, were being pampered like queens preparing for a coronation. Bring the good wrapper, not that one, the expensive one. Oil her skin until it shines. Where is the jewelry, the gold jewelry? Folashade set the water down quietly, hoping to slip back into the kitchen unnoticed. You! Too late. Madame Ibidun's eyes locked onto her like a hawk spotting prey. Come here. Folashade approached slowly, her head bowed. You will not be going to the palace tomorrow. The words hit her like stones, even though she'd expected them. Yes, ma. Do you know why? No, ma. Madame Ibidun stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. Because you are nothing. You are not my daughter. You are not family. You are the orphan I took in out of pity when your useless parents died. The palace is for real girls. Girls with futures, not kitchen rats like you. Folashade's throat tightened, but she refused to cry. Not here, not in front of them. Yes, ma. Now go. You have work to do. I want this entire compound spotless before we leave tomorrow. And when we return as the royal family, Madame Ibidun's eyes gleamed with greed. You'll be scrubbing our palace floors instead. Folashade nodded and turned away. Behind her cousins giggled. Imagine if she was the princess, Morayo sneered. The kingdom would collapse from shame. She doesn't even know how to sit properly, let alone rule, Bunmi added. Maybe she is the princess, Kemi said mockingly, and the bandits returned her because even they didn't want her. Their laughter followed Folashade all the way back to the kitchen. That night, Folashade couldn't sleep. She lay on her mat, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. Every girl must present themselves. A crescent moon birthmark. The princess would be 16 years old. Folashade sat up slowly. Her hands trembled. As she reached back and touched her left shoulder blade, the mark had always been there, for as long as she could remember. Her aunt had always told her to keep it covered. It's ugly, she'd said. People will think you're cursed. But what if no? Folashade shook her head firmly. She was being ridiculous. She was just Folashade, the orphan, the girl nobody wanted. Her parents, the ones who raised her, had been simple people. Her father was a farmer. Her mother sold vegetables in the market. They died when she was 5, during a fever that swept through the village. She barely remembered them. Just warmth, kindness, a mother's smile, and then they were gone. And Madame Ibidun, her father's older sister, had taken her in. At first it wasn't so bad, but as the years passed, the kindness faded, the chores increased, the insults sharpened. Now at 16, Folashade knew her place. She was nothing, just like her aunt said. But as she lay back down on her mat, her fingers still resting on that strange crescent mark, a tiny voice whispered in the back of her mind, "What if you're wrong?" The next morning arrived too quickly. Folashade was awake before dawn again, but this time the compound felt different, electric, tense with anticipation. Today was the day. Madame Ibidun had her daughters up at first light, fussing over every detail. Their wrappers were the finest silk. Their heads were wrapped in elaborate jewels that sparkled with gold thread. Coral beads hung heavy around their necks. They looked like royalty already. Folashade, meanwhile, swept the courtyard in her usual torn wrapper, her bare feet dusty, her hair uncombed. "Remember," Madame Ibidun addressed her daughters as they prepared to leave. "Stand tall, smile gracefully. When the Oba asks your name, speak clearly. One of you will be chosen. I can feel it." Morayo preened. "Obviously it will be me. I'm the eldest and the most beautiful." "Beauty isn't everything," Bunmi snapped. "The Oba we choose based on grace and intelligence. That's me." "You're both delusional," Kemi said, adjusting her beads. "I'm clearly the most elegant." As they bickered, Madame Ibidun's eyes drifted toward the kitchen, where Folashade was pretending not to listen. For just a moment, something flickered across the older woman's face. Fear? Guilt? It vanished as quickly as it came. "Let's go," Madame Ibidun said sharply. "The palace awaits." They climbed into the hired cart, their jewelry clinking, their laughter loud and confident. Not one of them looked back at Folashade. The compound fell silent. Folashade stood alone in the courtyard, broom still in hand, watching the dust settle where the cart had disappeared down the road. She should have felt relieved. No orders to follow, no insults to endure, just quiet. But instead, she felt hollow. What if one of them actually is chosen, she thought. What if Madame Ibidun becomes mother to the princess? The woman would be insufferable, powerful, untouchable. And Folashade, she'd be even more invisible than before. She sighed and turned back toward the house. That's when she saw her, An old woman stood at the compound gate. Folashade froze. Where had she come from? The road had been empty just seconds ago. The woman was ancient, her face deeply lined, her back bent, her wrapper faded and patched. She leaned heavily on a twisted walking stick, her eyes milky with age. Please. The old woman's voice was barely a whisper. Water. I need water. Folashade glanced around nervously. Madame Ibidun had strict rules about beggars. They're all thieves and tricksters, she'd say. Chase them away. But the woman looked so frail, so desperate. Folashade made a decision. Wait here, she said softly. She hurried to the kitchen and returned with a clay cup filled with cool water and a small bowl of leftover yam porridge from breakfast. The old woman's hands shook as she accepted them. Bless you, child. Bless you. She drank deeply, then ate the porridge with surprising speed. When she finished, she looked up at Folashade with those cloudy eyes, and suddenly they didn't seem so cloudy anymore. They were sharp, piercing, seeing. You have a kind heart, the old woman said. In a house full of cruelty, you chose kindness. Folashade shifted uncomfortably. It's just water and food, ma. Just? The old woman smiled, revealing gaps where teeth should be. Nothing is just anything, child. Every choice matters. Every act of mercy is recorded. Recorded by who? By those who watch, those who wait, those who remember. A chill ran down Folashade's spine despite the morning heat. The old woman reached out and touched Folashade's hand. Her fingers were cold, ice cold. You suffer here, she said. It wasn't a question. Folashade pulled her hand back gently. I should go. There's work to do. They went to the palace, didn't they? To see if one of them is the lost princess? Folashade's eyes widened. How did they take you with them? No. Why not? Because I'm not, Folashade's voice cracked. I'm nobody. Just an orphan they took in. The old woman tilted her head, studying her with an intensity that made Folashade want to run. Is that what you believe? That you are nobody? It's the truth. Truth. The old woman chuckled, a sound like dry leaves rustling. Truth is a funny thing, child. Sometimes it hides in plain sight for years, waiting, watching, until the right moment to reveal itself. Before Folashade could respond, the old woman turned and began walking away, a stick tapping against the ground. Wait! Folashade called out. What do you mean? The old woman paused at the gate and looked back over her shoulder. Your kindness will be repaid tenfold, Folashade. The truth cannot stay buried forever. What was stolen will be returned. What was hidden will come to light. I don't understand. You will. And then she was gone. Just gone. Folashade blinked. The road was empty. No figure walking away. No tap of a walking stick. Nothing. Had she imagined it? She looked down at the cup and bowl in her hands. They were real. Still wet from the water. Still smeared with yam porridge. A strange feeling settled over Folashade, like standing on the edge of something vast and unknowable. She shook it off and hurried back inside. There was still work to do. The day dragged on endlessly. Folashade cleaned, cooked, swept, washed, all the usual tasks. But her mind kept drifting back to the old woman's words. What was stolen will be returned. What was hidden will come to light. What did it mean? By late afternoon, Folashade found herself in Madame Ibidun's room, a place she normally avoided. She was supposed to be dusting, but her eyes kept wandering to the large wooden trunk in the corner. It was always locked. Madame Ibidun kept the key on a chain around her neck at all times. Folashade had never thought much about it before. Rich people had locked trunks. That was normal. But now, what was hidden will come to light. She knelt beside the trunk and ran her fingers along the carved edges. What was in there? Stop it! She muttered to herself. You're being foolish. But curiosity gnawed at her. She stood up, fully intending to leave the room and forget about it. That's when she saw it. On the floor, half hidden under the edge of Madame Ibidun's sleeping mat, a key, small, brass, with an ornate handle. Folashade's heart began to pound. No, don't. But her hand was already reaching for it. You'll get in trouble. Her fingers closed around the cool metal. This is wrong. She turned toward the trunk. The key slid into the lock like it was meant to be there. Click. Folashade held her breath and lifted the lid. Inside were clothes, fine wrappers, jewelry, money. Nothing unusual. She was about to close it when she noticed something else. A wooden box tucked in the bottom corner, wrapped in old cloth. She pulled it out carefully and unwrapped it. The box was small, plain, with no lock. She opened it. Inside was a single letter. The paper was yellowed with age, the edges frayed. The handwriting was elegant but hurried. Folashade's hands trembled as she unfolded it, and then she began to read. To whoever finds this letter, my name is Adebayo. I served as the Oba's royal guard for 15 years. This may be the last thing I ever write. 11 years ago, bandits attacked the palace. They came for the princess, 5-year-old Adais. We fought. Many of my brothers died, but I reached her first. I carried her out through the secret passages while the palace burned. I ran until my legs gave out. I ran until the screams faded behind me, but I couldn't return her. Because the attack wasn't random. Someone inside the palace wanted her dead. Someone close to the Oba. I don't know who, but I heard them. 2 men talking in the corridor before the raid. Make sure the girl doesn't survive. The kingdom needs a male heir. I couldn't risk taking her back, not until I knew who to trust, so I ran farther. My wife, Abeni, and I fled to a distant village. We changed our names. We raised the princess as our own daughter. We called her Folashade. We told no one, not even her. The birthmark on her shoulder, the crescent moon, we kept it hidden. We told her it was ugly, that people would mock her. We did it to protect her. We planned to reveal the truth when she turned 16, when she was old enough to understand, strong enough to reclaim what was stolen. But fate had other plans. The fever came. Ebeni died first. I followed 3 days later. Before I died, I begged my sister Ibidun to care for Folashade. I told her everything. I showed her this letter. I showed her the royal seal I'd kept hidden all these years. Proof of who the child really was. I begged her to tell Folashade the truth when the time was right. I begged her to take her to the palace. Ibidun promised. She swore on her mother's grave. I can only pray she keeps her word. To Folashade, my precious daughter, though not by blood, if you are reading this, know that we loved you more than life itself. You are Princess Adais. You are the rightful heir to the throne. The crescent moon on your shoulder is your birthright. Go to the palace. Show them the mark. Show them this letter. Reclaim your kingdom, my daughter. Reclaim your life. With all my love, Adebayo, your father in all the ways that matter. The letter slipped from Folashade's fingers. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't move. Princess Adais, that's me. I am the princess. The room spun around her. She gripped the edge of the trunk to steady herself. 11 years. 11 years. Madame Ibidun had known. She'd read this letter. She'd made a promise to a dying man, our own brother, and she'd lied. She'd hidden the truth, kept Folashade as a slave, treated her like garbage, while knowing who she really was. Rage exploded in Folashade's chest like lightning. She looked back into the wooden box. Beneath where the letter had been, there was something else. a small cloth bundle. She unwrapped it with shaking hands. Inside was a bronze seal, the royal crest of the kingdom, and a tiny anklet, so small it could only fit a child. Gold, with the name Addis engraved in delicate script. Proof, all the proof she needed. Folashed's mind raced. Madame Ibidun is at the palace right now. She's presenting her own daughters as potential princesses, while I, the real princess, sit here in a kitchen. The betrayal cut deeper than any insult ever had. But beneath the rage and pain, something else. Dad, hope. I can still go. I can still make it to the palace. She stood up, clutching the letter, the seal, and the anklet. Then she froze. What was she thinking? She looked down at herself, her torn wrapper, her dirty hands, her uncombed hair. She looked like a beggar. How could she possibly walk into the palace like this and claim to be the lost princess? They'd laugh at her, throw her out. Or worse, Madame Ibidun would see her and find some way to twist the truth, to make her look like a liar, a thief. Folashade sank to the floor, the precious items still clutched in her hands. Tears finally came, hot, bitter, unstoppable. Why? She whispered to the empty room. Why did you hide this from me? She thought of her father, Adebayo, the man who'd raised her, protected her, died for her. He trusted his sister, and his sister had destroyed that trust. I don't know what to do, Volashade sobbed. I don't know how to... A voice cut through her despair. Fold the letter carefully, child. You'll need it. Folashade's head snapped up. The old woman from that morning stood in the doorway, but she wasn't bent anymore, wasn't frail. She stood tall, radiant. Her wrapper glowed with ethereal light. Her eyes, no longer milky, shone like stars. Folashade scrambled backward. Who are you? The woman smiled gently. I am many things, a guardian, a messenger, a keeper of promises. Your mother, Abini, sent me, and your father. They watch over you still, Folashade. They have never left you. That's impossible. Is it? The woman glided forward, her feet barely touching the ground. You've just discovered you're a hidden princess. After that, is a spirit messenger really so hard to believe? Folashade's mouth opened and closed uselessly. The spirit woman knelt beside her, and warmth radiated from her like a gentle fire. You've suffered long enough, Princess Adaze. Today, the suffering ends. Today, the truth comes to light. Today, you reclaim what was stolen. But I can't just walk into the palace looking like this. Can't you? The spirit woman reached out and touched Folashade's torn wrapper. Light burst from her fingertips. Folashade gasped as the fabric transformed. The tears mended themselves. The dull brown shifted to deep indigo blue, then rich purple, embroidered with golden threads that seemed to move like living vines. Her wrapper became a magnificent outfit, the kind worn by royalty. Your hair, the spirit woman murmured, touching Folashade's head. Instantly, her hair arranged itself into an elaborate style adorned with golden pins that appeared from nowhere. Your skin. The dust and grime vanished. Folashade's skin glowed. Your feet. Beautiful beaded sandals materialized, fitting perfectly. Folashade looked down at herself in shock. She looked like a princess. Now, the spirit woman said, standing, you have everything you need. The letter, the seal, the anklet, and most importantly, she touched Folashade's shoulder, right where the birthmark was. The mark of your birthright. Folashade stood slowly, feeling like she was in a dream. But how do I get to the palace? It's half a day's walk from here. By the time I arrive, the spirit woman laughed, a sound like bells chiming. Child, Did you think I would send you walking? She clapped her hands once. The air shimmered, and suddenly they were no longer in Madame Ibidun's room. They stood at the palace gates. Folashad's legs nearly gave out. How did you? Time is short. The Hoba is moments away from giving up hope. He's seen hundreds of girls. None of them were you. He's beginning to believe his daughter is truly lost forever. The spirit woman placed both hands on Folashad's shoulders, her expression serious now. Listen to me carefully. When you walk through those gates, you will face doubt, mockery. Your aunt will try to stop you. She will lie, she will scheme, but you must stand firm. The truth is on your side. The ancestors are on your side. And most importantly, she tapped Folashad's chest, right over her heart. Your courage is on your side. I'm scared, Folashade whispered. Good. Fear means you understand how much this matters. But don't let fear stop you. Let it fuel you. The spirit woman began to fade, her form becoming translucent. Wait! Folashade reached out. Will I see you again? When you need me most, I will be there. Now go. Your father waits. Your kingdom waits. Thank you, Folashade said, tears streaming down her face. Thank your parents. Thank your own brave heart. Now go. And with that, the spirit woman vanished completely. Folashade stood alone before the towering palace gates. From inside, she could hear voices, hundreds of them. The inspection was still happening. She looked down at the letter in her hands, at the royal seal, at the tiny golden anklet. Then she touched her shoulder, feeling the crescent moon birthmark beneath the fine fabric. I am Princess Adiz, she whispered to herself. This is my birthright. This is my truth. She took a deep breath and walked toward the gates. The palace guards stood at attention as Folashade approached. They were massive men, bare-chested, with tribal marks carved into their faces and spears that gleamed in the afternoon sun. One of them stepped forward, blocking her path. State your business. Folashade's voice came out stronger than she expected. I'm here for the princess inspection. The guard's eyes swept over her, taking in her fine clothes, her regal bearing, and his expression softened slightly. You're late. The Hoba has already seen over 300 girls. I know, but I need to be seen. The second guard frowned. Where is your family? Every girl came with relatives. I came alone. That's irregular. Please. Folashade met his eyes steadily. I've traveled far. I only ask for a chance. The guards exchanged glances. Finally, the first one nodded. Wait here. He disappeared through the gates. Minutes passed like hours. Folashade's heart hammered against her ribs. Her palms were sweating despite the spirit woman's magical transformation. What if they turned me away? What if I came all this way for nothing? The guard returned, accompanied by an elderly man in elaborate robes, clearly a palace official. The official studied Folashade with shrewd eyes. You wish to be presented to the Oba? Yes, sir. You understand that false claims to the princess's identity are punishable by imprisonment. Folashade lifted her chin. I understand. Something in her tone made the official pause. He looked at her more carefully, at the birthmark partially visible at her shoulder, at the way she carried herself despite arriving alone. Very well. Follow me. The palace interior was magnificent. Folashade tried not to gawk as they walked through corridors lined with carved pillars and walls decorated with intricate bronze plaques depicting the kingdom's history. Servants hurried past carrying trays. Court officials whispered in clusters. Musicians played softly in distant chambers. And then they entered the great hall. It was enormous. The ceiling soared high above, supported by massive wooden beams. Woven tapestries hung from the walls. And at the far end, elevated on a platform, sat the Oba. He looked tired. The crown on his head seemed too heavy. His shoulders sagged. His eyes held a deep, aching sadness that made Folashad's chest tighten. Around him stood his council, stern-faced men and women in rich robes. And in the center of the hall, standing in a line, were Madame Ibidun and her 3 daughters. They hadn't been chosen yet. They were still waiting for the final announcement. Morayo saw Folashad first. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth fell open. What is she doing here? All heads turned. Madame Ibidun's face went pale, then red, then pale again. For a moment she looked like she might faint. Then rage took over. Folashade! She shrieked, storming toward her. How dare you? How dare you show your face here? And where did you get those clothes? Did you steal them from my trunk? The accusation hung in the air. Folashade stood her ground, her voice calm. I stole nothing that wasn't already mine. Liar! Madame Ibidun raised her hand to strike her. Enough! The Oba's voice rang out like thunder. Everyone froze. He rose from his throne, his eyes fixed on the commotion. Who is this girl? He demanded. The official who'd brought Folashade in bowed low. Your Majesty, she arrived at the gate requesting to be seen. She came alone, but she insisted. She is nobody, Madame Ibidun interrupted desperately. She's an orphan I took in out of charity. She's confused. She doesn't belong here. Then why? The Oba said slowly, his gaze shifting to Madame Ibidun. Do you seem so frightened? Madame Ibidun's mouth opened and closed like a fish. The Oba descended from his platform, walking toward Folashad. Every step echoed in the silent hall. He stopped 3 feet away, studying her face. What is your name, child? Folashade, Your Majesty. Though I was born Adais. A collective gasp rippled through the hall. The Oba's eyes widened. You claim to be my daughter? I don't claim, Your Majesty. I know. Many girls have made such claims today. All of them were wrong. Folashade reached into the folds of her wrapper and pulled out the letter with trembling hands. My father, the man who raised me, was named Adebayo. He was your royal guard. He saved me the night of the attack. This letter explains everything. The Oba took the letter, his hands shaking. He unfolded it and began to read. The silence in the hall was absolute. Folashade watched his face as he read, watched hope flicker, then brighten, then blaze. When he finished, tears streamed down his cheeks. Adebayo, he whispered, I mourned him as dead. He was my most trusted guard, my friend. He looked up at Folashade, his voice breaking. He saved you? All these years, he kept you safe. Yes, Your Majesty. Until he and my mother died of fever when I was 5. And then, Folashade's eyes shifted to Madame Ibidun, who had gone deathly pale. Then his sister, Madame Ibidun, took me in. He told her everything on his deathbed. He showed her this letter. He begged her to reveal the truth when I turned 16 and bring me to you. The Oba's gaze turned to Madame Ibidun, cold as ice. Is this true? No. She's lying. I never. Is this true? Madame Ibidun flinched. Her daughters cowered behind her. I didn't. She was just a child. I didn't think. You knew? The Oba's voice shook with fury. You knew my daughter was alive and you said nothing? I didn't know for certain. The letter could have been fake. The child could have been anyone. Did you check? Did you bring her to me so I could verify? Silence. You kept her as a servant? The Oba's fists clenched. You made the princess of this kingdom scrub your floors? Please, Your Majesty, I can explain. Guards! 2 guards stepped forward immediately. Seize this woman and her daughters. They will be dealt with later. No! Madam Ibidun screamed. Please! I made a mistake. I was confused. I didn't mean... Take them! The guards grabbed them roughly. Morayo, Bunmi, and Kemi wailed in terror as they were dragged away. Madam Ibidun struggled, shrieking. She's not a princess. She can't be. Look at her. She's nothing. Nothing. The doors slammed shut behind them. The hall fell silent once more. The Oba turned back to Folashade, his expression softening. The letter is compelling, but I must be certain. Many have tried to deceive me with forged documents. I understand, Your Majesty. Folashade pulled out the royal seal and the tiny anklet, placing them in his hands. The Oba stared at them, his breath catching. This seal, I gave it to Adebayo myself. It was meant to grant him access to the royal chambers in emergencies. He held up the anklet, his voice cracking. And this, I placed this on my daughter's ankle the day she was born. Her name is engraved here. He traced the letters with his finger. Others, there is one more thing, Your Majesty, Folashade said quietly. She turned, gently pulling aside the wrapper to reveal her left shoulder blade. There, clear and unmistakable, was the crescent moon birthmark. The Oba staggered. One of his advisors rushed forward to steady him. It's her, he breathed. It's really her. He reached out with shaking hands and touched the birthmark, as if confirming it was real. Then he pulled Folashade into his arms and wept. My daughter, my precious daughter, you're alive, you're home. Folashade's own tears came then, unstoppable and fierce. For the first time in 11 years, she felt safe. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged. I'm home, Father, she whispered. I'm finally home. The great hall erupted in cheers. Drums began to beat. Horns sounded. Servants rushed to spread the news throughout the kingdom. The princess had been found. The celebration that erupted in the palace was unlike anything Folashade had ever witnessed. Within minutes, the great hall filled with people. Drummers appeared from nowhere, their rhythms shaking the very walls. Dancers spun in elaborate costumes. Servants brought platters of food and pitchers of palm wine. But through it all, the Oba never let go of Folashade's hand. He held it like she might vanish if he released her. Held it like a man who'd spent 11 years drowning and had finally found air. I searched everywhere, he told her, his voice thick with emotion. Every village, every town. I sent riders across the entire kingdom and beyond. I never stopped looking. I know, Father, Folashade said softly. The word felt strange on her tongue, but also right. Adebayo, my other father. He knew. That's why he kept me hidden. He said there were traitors in the palace, men who wanted me dead. The Oba's expression darkened. He was right to be cautious. After the attack, I discovered that 2 of my own council members had conspired with the bandits. They believed a female heir would weaken the kingdom. They wanted me to remarry, to produce sons. What happened to them? They were executed for treason. His jaw tightened. But the damage was done. My daughter was gone. Or so I thought. He touched her face gently, as if memorizing every feature. You look like your mother. She died giving birth to you, but she would be so proud of the woman you've become. Folashade's throat tightened. Tell me about her. Later, the Oba promised. We have a lifetime to share stories. But first, he turned to his chief advisor, an elderly man with kind eyes and elaborate tribal marks. Bring the royal clothier. The princess needs proper attire, and prepare the ceremonial chamber. Tonight, we will hold the official recognition ceremony. Yes, Your Majesty. The advisor bowed and hurried away. The Oba looked back at Folashade, a smile breaking through his tears. You've been in rags long enough, Adais. Tonight the kingdom will see you as you truly are, their princess, their future queen. The next few hours passed in a whirlwind. Folashade was whisked away by a team of palace attendants. All women moved forced over her with genuine joy and excitement. They led her to the royal bathing chambers, where she soaked in water perfumed with flowers and herbs. They washed her hair with oils that smelled like paradise. They massaged her tired, work-worn body until the years of labor seemed to melt away. Then came the clothing. The royal clothier was a tiny, energetic woman named Iya Akbar, who took one look at Folashade and burst into tears. "Princess Ades, we thought you were dead. Oh, the ancestors have blessed us." She brought out wrapper after wrapper, each more magnificent than the last. Deep blues, rich purples, emerald greens, all embroidered with gold and silver thread, studded with precious stones. Finally, they settled on a stunning indigo wrapper with gold patterns that seemed to shimmer and move in the light. It was paired with a matching top and a jewel so elaborate it took two women to tie it properly. Coral beads, the traditional mark of royalty, were draped around Folashad's neck in multiple strands. Gold bangles adorned her wrists. Rings sparkled on her fingers. When Folashade finally looked at herself in the bronze mirror, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. Gone was the skinny, ragged orphan who scrubbed floors. In her place stood a princess. "Beautiful," Iya Agba whispered, wiping her eyes. "Just like your mother." A soft knock sounded at the door. "The ceremony is about to begin, princess," a voice called. Folashade took a deep breath. This was it. This was real. The great hall had been transformed. Hundreds of people packed the space. Nobles, chiefs, commoners who'd been allowed in to witness this historic moment. Torches blazed along the walls. Incense burned, filling the air with sweet smoke. The drums had reached a fever pitch. Folashade entered through the grand doors, and the drumming stopped. Silence fell like a curtain. Every eye turned to her. She walked slowly down the center aisle, her head high, her heart pounding. At the end, the Hoba waited on his throne, flanked by his council and the kingdom's most important officials. When she reached the platform, she knelt before him as she'd been instructed. The Yoba stood, his voice ringing out across the hall. "People of this kingdom, today the ancestors have answered our prayers. Today, what was lost has been found. Today, I present to you Princess Ades, my daughter, your future queen." The hall erupted. People shouted, cheered, wept openly. The Yoba raised his hand for silence. 11 years ago, my daughter was stolen from me. I believed her dead, but she was protected by a loyal guard who gave his life to keep her safe, by a mother who loved her though they shared no blood, and by her own strength and kindness. He gestured for Folashade to stand. She survived cruelty. She endured suffering, yet she never lost her gentle heart. She showed mercy even to those who showed her none. He placed his hands on her shoulders. "This is the mark of a true queen, not just royal blood, but a royal spirit." He lifted the crown from his own head, a magnificent piece of gold and precious stones, and held it high. "But she is too young to rule yet. So tonight, I give her not the crown of a queen, but the crown of a princess." A servant brought forward a smaller, more delicate crown. The Oba placed it gently on Folashad's head. "I, Oba of this kingdom, recognize Adais as my daughter and heir. What say you, my people?" "We recognize her!" The crowd roared as one. "We recognize Princess Adais!" The drums exploded back to life. The dancing resumed. The celebration became a frenzy of joy. But through it all, Folashade and her father stood together, holding hands, tears of joy streaming down both their faces. Later that night, after the celebrations had died down, Folashade found herself in her new chambers. a suite of rooms larger than Madame Ibidun's entire compound. She stood on the balcony, looking out over the kingdom that would one day be hers. Quite a change from the kitchen floor, isn't it? Folashad turned. The spirit woman stood there, no longer glowing, but dressed in simple, elegant robes. She looked normal, human. You came back, Folashad said softly. I told you I would when you needed me most. I don't need anything right now. I'm happy. For the first time I can remember. I'm truly happy. The spirit woman smiled. I know, but there's one more matter to settle. Madame Ibidun? Yes. Folashed's joy dimmed slightly. What will happen to her? That's not for me to decide. It's for you. Me? Tomorrow the Oba will ask you what punishment she deserves. What will you say? Folashade was quiet for a long moment. I should hate her, she finally said. She stole 11 years from me. She knew who I was and treated me like nothing. She kept me from my father, from my birthright. Yes, she did. But, Folashad sighed. Hating her won't give me those years back. And Adebayo, my father who raised me, he taught me that revenge only poisons the soul of the one seeking it. So what will you do? I'll give her the same message she never showed me. Banishment instead of execution. Let her live with her daughters. Let them start over somewhere else. But they can never return. The spirit woman's smile widened. Your fathers, both of them, would be very proud. Will you tell them, wherever they are? They already know. They're watching, always. The spirit woman began to fade, her form becoming translucent once more. Wait, Folashad called. Will I see you again? Perhaps. When you need guidance, when you face difficult choices, when you forget who you really are. The spirit woman's voice grew distant. But I suspect you won't need me much anymore, princess. You found your way home. Thank you, Folashade whispered, for everything. Thank yourself. Thank your courage. Thank your kind heart. And then she was gone. Folashad stood alone on the balcony, the crown still on her head, the kingdom spread out before her. She thought of everything that had led to this moment, the cruelty, the suffering, the endless days of labor and humiliation, but also the kindness of her adoptive parents, the strength she developed, the gentle heart that had remained unbroken despite everything. I am Princess Adiz, she said to the night sky, but I'm also Folashade, the girl who survived, the girl who stayed kind when the world was cruel. She smiled. And I'll be a queen who remembers both. The next morning, Madame Ibidun and her daughters were brought before the throne. They knelt in chains, their fine clothes gone, replaced by simple prison garb. You kept my daughter in slavery, the Oba said, his voice like iron. You betrayed your own brother's dying wish. You chose greed over honor. For this, you deserve death. Madame Ibidun wept, her daughter sobbing beside her. However, the Oba continued, my daughter has asked me to show mercy. Madame Ibidun's head snapped up, hope flickering in her eyes. The Oba gestured to Folashad, who stood beside his throne in her royal attire. Speak, princess. Folashad looked down at the woman who tormented her for 11 years. You'll be banished from this kingdom, you and your daughters. You'll take nothing with you, no wealth, no status. You'll leave today and never return. If you're found within our borders again, the sentence will be death. But where will we go? Madame Ibidun whimpered. Somewhere you can learn what I had to learn, Folashad said quietly. That cruelty has consequences, that lies eventually come to light, and that kindness, even when it costs you, everything is always worth more than gold. The guards dragged them away, still weeping. Folashade watched them go, feeling no satisfaction, but no regret either. Justice had been served, mercy had been shown, the balance was complete. Months passed. Princess Adais, known to her closest friends as Folashade, threw herself into learning everything about ruling a kingdom. She studied law, diplomacy, trade, and warfare. She met with village chiefs and listened to their concerns. She walked among her people, remembering what it was like to be powerless and using that memory to guide her decisions. And one of her first royal decrees? The establishment of a home for orphans, a place where children without families could be raised with love, education, and dignity. She named it Adebayo and Abeni's house in honor of the parents who'd saved her life. On the day it opened, Folashad stood before the gathered children and told them a story. "I was once like you," she said, "lost, alone, afraid. But I learned that where you start doesn't determine where you finish, that your value isn't defined by how others treat you, and that kindness, your kindness, can change the world." The children listened, wide-eyed. One small girl raised her hand. "Will we all become princesses too?" Folashad smiled. "Maybe not princesses, but you'll become something even better. You'll become strong, wise, kind, and those qualities make you royalty in the ways that truly matter." And that's how Folashad went from sleeping on a kitchen mat to reclaiming her throne. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear that kindness and truth always win in the end. What did you think of Folashad's journey, and what lesson do you learn? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. And if you want more powerful African folktales like this, subscribe and hit that bell icon. Thank you for watching. And remember, your gentle heart can change kingdoms. See you in the next story.